Now, we will start with this. So, there's two things I'd like to talk to you about today. The first thing is about the interface student experience survey, or the ISCQs, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. But I just want to go through it one more time, just to remind you guys as to what the purpose of it is, and how we actually use it as teaching staff in the faculty. And then I will just have a very quick lecture about design thinking, based on the things that I'm seeing from some of the students in my group, I suppose. So we'll do that. So it won't be very long, and then we'll move on into two groups. Any of Rob's students here this morning? Okay, Rob is still unwell. So what I suggest you do is to Melanie will be available for you this afternoon for this week and next week. So Rob's students, and I'll send out an announcement anyway to Rob's students. But Rob's students will basically stick with Melanie for the first assignment, and then after that go back to Rob. So there's not so much chopping and changing. There's a bit of continuity. Yeah, Rob's just had a family emergency that's now resolved, but these things take a bit of time to work out and to bring it to basically tidy up at the end. So all is good with Rob, but he just needs a bit of time to get things organized and sorted. Okay, so interface is really a digital dashboard where you can keep an eye on your progress and provide feedback to the university. So it provides information about your learning activities to help you monitor your progress towards successfully completing your studies. And based on the results of other students in the same and similar unit, interface provides nudges, quote unquote, that you can use to achieve your goals and take control of your studies. For us, it means that it also allows you to give instant feedback to the university to help us understand how you're feeling about your units and how we can improve your student experience. So each of the unit conveners, such as myself and Melissa, who you had yesterday, have our own version of interface. So we can only see the interface results for the units that we are the conveners of. And really, the dashboards then provide you and I, teachers and students, with shared information as to how, as to student progress and satisfaction and learning activities. So we really value your real-time comments and feedback, and that's because we use it to improve the units. So what you might notice is in the unit outlines we have something that is specific, but not so specific that we can't make little changes here and there based on the response that we get from you guys during the semester. Now, the thing with this is that you guys won't get direct responses or personal responses for each of your comments, and that's because for us they're anonymous, so we don't know who is leaving which comment. Okay, so that's very important, because it gives you basically confidence to speak freely. And based on those comments, basically we act on the issues you raise. Now, I might just add that the comments are anonymous to the unit conveners and to the faculty, but basically, if there is if comments breach student conduct rules, then we can forward it to the university for action. Okay, so this is really just to say this is supposed to be a constructive process. Please speak freely, but please also maintain professional communications. So this is going to be important for you guys in the future anyway in your professional career. So it's a good time to start practicing those kinds of things. If you have questions about this, then send it to interface@canberra.edu.au. Now, when we receive your constructive feedback, we'll reflect on it and consider possible actions that could address the feedback in immediate terms, or in the immediate term, or in the longer term, or both. So I have very actively used the comments, especially that I've gotten from this unit, as well as from my other units, as a way of improving the unit and making it work better. Okay, so now this is not to mean that, of course, this is not to mean that it's going to be easier, or we're going to lower our standards in terms of educational outputs. But what it does mean is that we understand your concerns, and we can tailor the teaching in order to make things clearer and more logical for you guys. Okay, we try and make clarity with a complicated subject, because architecture can be quite complicated. And if appropriate, we'll discuss the feedback with all of you at the same time, so that we can have a little bit of a kind of town hall type feedback session, and ask you guys how you think we should address it. And then we'll let you know when we make changes to the future assignments that are coming up. And then, of course, this process goes on as well. And then basically we'll then seek advice from you guys as to how you think we've gone with the changes that we've made, and make further refinements. Again, just a reminder that it should follow the student charter. This is something that you guys should all go and look at. We have a charter. The staff also have a charter in terms of how we deal with you, which is basically that it's about civil society, I guess. So what we're talking about here is that the interface dashboard and surveys are not TripAdvisor. They're not Yelp. They're not Zomato. So this is a place that you guys will be studying in for a while. So this is a way to make constructive criticism rather than to completely have a go at people. Okay, because that doesn't actually solve anything. What we want to do, the aim of this is to make things better. If you don't like a restaurant, you don't go back. That's the end of it. But in this case, really, you guys have other units in this faculty and so forth. Okay, so the survey will pop up in Interface. So Interface is the window you go through before you get to your Canvas. Is that right? That's right, isn't it? So it's the same for us as well. So it will pop up in weeks 3, 7, and 11. And they only take a moment to complete. Yeah. So the basic model, if you just want to go and complete the survey, is pretty quick. And then if you want to add additional comments, that's also possible. Again, they're anonymous to the unit conveners, so we don't know who's saying what, and I think that's a good system in terms of you guys speaking freely without anonymously to bring out your concerns. But please, keep your concerns fair. We have to be very fair with you guys and very even. So I'd ask that you do the same. You do the same for us. Okay. And essentially, we want all feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. Now, and I'd like to encourage you guys all to go and do the survey, because what tends to happen is the people who have more concerns tend to be the one who responds, and the people who have no concerns or think that things are good generally don't respond because they don't see a need to. At the end of the day, basically what this means is that we get an overall rating for the unit. So I would like that rating to be representative of the feelings of the entire student cohort in this unit, not just the ones who have a beef with certain aspects of it. And we take all beef seriously, but of course we also need to assess it. So if you don't like my shoes, then okay, never mind. I'll try not. I'll move on. But if there's something that's of something that we can fix in terms of how we're dealing with you, or something you're not understanding, then we will do it and let you guys know how we're going to do it. All right. So these are the questions that you will get in the survey. So please go through it and answer them. So the one that is released this week that you'll be able to see in your Canvas right now is the first one. The second one will be week 7, just before the non-teaching week in week 8, and then the third one is in week 11. Okay. So from your relationship with us through the studio sessions, you guys will have a good idea as to how you guys are traveling, because we will be candid with you to assess what we can see. Okay. So we will tell you certainly that whether something is working or isn't working so well, and we will also tell you that when we can't tell, we can say this is working, but there's a lot of things here, we can't see the other things yet. So we will continue to give you this kind of advice moving forward. So basically, these are the questions that we'd like you to answer in the survey, and then also we will be looking at your answers in order to make things better. Okay. At the end of the day, this is also something that I am rated by. At the end of the day, I'm rated as a teacher by the university as to the number of people who respond, and also the I suppose the quality of the reviews. So depending on your answers, I will get a rating of between 0 and 100. Okay, so I've never really worried about these kinds of things in the past. Really just more concerned that you guys know what's going on. But on the same note, this is a good way to formally map how effective I am as a teacher. And this basically means that this is my kind of review. So for you guys, you get your review at the end of the semester. A panel assesses your work and decides what mark you're getting. So you guys are marking me in terms of these feedback. So if you think I'm no good, that's fine and well. I will use that feedback to try and get better. But it's also important that if you guys think that we're doing a good job, that you also say so that it's a fair rating. Okay. All right. So the second thing I want to talk to you guys today about is just a quick thing about design thinking. And design thinking is important for us because, of course, this is a design studio where we're trying to teach you guys how to design. Okay, now this presentation was prepared by Erin Hinton, who's really quite a successful architect who also teaches here, and she's also a successful academic. So she's someone who's able to put things in very clear and straightforward terms, and so I'm just going to use her presentation and her notes for this little speech here. So we've got 5 or 6 slides. It's very short, and then after that we'll move on to the tutorial. Design thinking is an alternative process that architects use. So it's a process which is different to processes that you would find in other fields or other disciplines. It's a human-centered approach to innovation and problem solving that draws from the designer's toolkit to integrate the needs of people with the requirements for business success. Because at the end of the day, we all need to have a certain measure of business success in order to be effective, in order to stay open as architectural practices, in order to get things done. Design thinking is a design process which provides a solution-based approach to solving problems. It has been used by architects and designers for decades, but has more recently received recognition across many businesses and industries as a collaborative and highly successful approach to problem solving. Companies including Airbnb, Google, Microsoft, GE, and Toshiba have all accepted design thinking as a primary means of business strategy and development. And this was not always the case, right? Because a lot of these companies would have been very linear and very simplistic in the way that they think about business strategy and development. And the fact that they're now looking at the ways that designers and architects do things means that that they're getting some success out of it. Architects are used to dealing with complex problems. So design thinking is about the resolution of complex problems by developing an understanding of a few things, primarily human needs, the human needs involved. By reframing the problem in human-centered ways, by creating many ideas in collaborative brainstorming sessions, and by adopting a hands-on iterative approach to prototyping and testing. So iterative just means doing something, assessing it, doing it again, assessing it again, and just using what you learned from the one you did before to move on to the next one. And this process moves on until you get to a point where you've got something that works well. Okay, so the 5 stages of design thinking are as follows. Firstly, emphasize. Secondly, define the problem. Thirdly, ideate. Fourth, prototype. And fifth, test. Okay, so basically the aim here is to discuss which of these stages relate to each assignment to better help you with understanding in how to approach the task at hand, which is assignment 1. So if we start with empathize, it's really for the designer to gain an empathic understanding of the problem to be solved. This involves consultation with users to find out more about the problem through an in-depth understanding of their experiences and motivations. So empathy, or understanding compassion, is crucial to design thinking as it allows design thinkers to set aside their own ideas about the world in order to understand others and their needs. So depending on time constraints, a lot of information is gathered at this stage to use during the next stage and to help develop the best possible understanding of the users, their needs, and the problems that exist in a particular project. So in the context of an architectural project or design studio, what we get is we get a brief from the client, which is basically a list of stuff that we need. So within this stage, which is what you're doing in assignment 1, what we need to do is to analyze that brief and analyze the site to see how it relates to how the thing is being used. So the good thing about this is that it is a petrol station that we're looking at. It is something that we all use. So what we need to do now, as users of the petrol station, is not only find out from other people how they're used and to get their input or their ideas as to how petrol stations should function, but also to put on our designer's hats. So when we're pumping petrol, to actually try and look for the things in the brief and to see how they actually operate in a petrol station, and then to make an assessment as to whether that's a good idea or not. All right. So through this process, we have to kind of put aside our particular problems with petrol stations, like maybe the fact that they don't sell the kind of cheese that we want, or they don't sell DVDs, or you can only pay in a certain way, etc., etc. And to look at the bigger picture as to how we can make it better for all users. Okay, and so this includes a very close look at the site as well as the brief. So the second stage is really to define the problem. So it's all about bringing clarity and focus to the process, and it's a chance to define the challenge, the problem, or what needs to be changed based on what we've learned and the user and the context. So I've just given some very basic relationships that are required in the brief, but it's up to you guys to actually map that out visually to see how things should be linked, and that will then define a number of problems that need to be solved in the later stage. So really, the define stage has started with the brief, but what we want to do is to establish a concise and actionable problem statement. And this statement can really be as much a graphic one as a written one. And in this case, it would be the way we've set up assignment 1 is to actually come up with a problem statement that is graphic and perhaps supported by a little bit of text. So really, this then focuses the needs of particular users, right? So it's about making sense of the brief. So for people who pump petrol, what are the issues there? You know, is it that you want to limit the number of turns from the street into the Bowser because you want to make it as easy as possible? And so this is the kind of thing. Or do you want to make it as hard as possible to get to the Bowser, to go through 25 different chicanes to be able to get there? Yeah. So this is the kind of this is an example of what we mean by defining the problem. Now, the third stage would be what we call ideate and collaborate. And when I say collaborate here, it doesn't only mean collaborating with your studio leader, with your tutor, as to develop things, to develop the assignment and to develop things in the class. But it's also about collaborating with your classmates to see how they are approaching things, yeah, and to use observations of theirs to actually help your own things. So there's no point in redesigning the wheel. So if you can see that someone else has an issue with something, then you can use that to learn about your own design and try to avoid those issues. Okay, so really, what this is conceptually, it means trying to deal with lots of different ideas and outcomes, and really this will look at this ideate phase mostly in assignment 2, where we will try to isolate out specific things that need to be looked at. So the idea here is really that there is no right or wrong answer. It's really to encourage you guys to have free thought and just to do things kind of instinctively, and then we can talk about that and use that process to learn about the instincts, your own instincts as well in design. And really, this is about sort of getting as many ideas together. So the assignment 2 will be about producing 2 different things at the end. But to get to that point, we'd like to see you guys produce a few different options for each of those things, just as a way of testing your ideas, just to see what's going to work and what's not going to work. And the best way to test an idea is to actually have the idea in physical form or in drawings to represent it. It's got to get out of your head, through the medium of your fingertips, onto the table. Okay? So obviously assignment 1 informs this, but really mostly it's assignment 2 where we'll be looking at the idea of ideating. Now phase 4 and phase 5, which is the prototype phase and the testing phase, we will deal with in assignment 3. What we want to do in this case is with all the approaches, what we got to do is to focus on the phase at hand and not jump to future phases, not get ahead of ourselves. Yeah, and there's a reason for that, which I'll get to in a tick. So phase 4, which is the prototyping phase is really it's the subtitle that Aaron has here is called the fun of failure. So it involves the creation of objects and processes which is intended to bring the problem closer to final solution. So you bring your ideas in phase 3 plus all your analysis from phase 1 and 2 together. Sorry, I think I said the wrong phase. You bring your ideas from phase 3, which is the ideate one, which we do in assignment 2, and your work from phase 1 and 2, which is assignment 1, together in assignment 3. So in terms of prototyping, what we're basically doing is we are making things to bring those things together, and then in the 5th phase, which is testing, we then test the bringing together of those two things to see how they work in terms of what we need to produce. So phase 4 and 5 are related to us. So we do a prototype. In other words, we design a petrol station, and then we test it against what we know about it and with our colleagues. And then from the feedback we get from that, then we move on and make it better. Okay, or we might ditch it altogether and start again and try a different idea. So that's so really the idea of this is to get a better idea of the constraints of the project and to develop a more informed perspective as to how the thing would be used. Okay, so we do ask for you to imagine how it would be for you guys to go and put petrol in, you know, how to use the petrol station when you're pumping petrol. And really, the 5th stage is to bring it down to much more of a real world context. So that is where we actually look at how the thing will be used by the general public and how you make it into the design for a building. Okay, so that's really how the 3 stages of the assignments relate to each other. I said in the first assignment, in the first lecture, that really this was teaching you guys as to what happens in architects' offices when they approach design. So it is important to mention that for experienced designers and architects, these things can happen out of sequence. Yeah, these things can happen out of sequence. But for you guys, what we are doing is to introduce you to all the different stages in a very ordered way. Yeah, so that you can actually focus on the one thing and not move on to the other thing before time, as a way of getting familiar with all the different stages. And you'll find that as you move through the course, you will be it'll be design studios to be less and less structured, and you can start mixing and matching these different stages. But just to remind you that what we're doing here is we're purposely making you go through these stages to familiarize yourself with you guys with the process. Now, as I said before, we use the studio environment to collaborate on ideas, both between tutors and students, but also between students. Okay. But remember that this design studio is looking for requires unique solutions from each student. So while we are encouraging collaboration in terms of sharing of ideas and getting basic knowledge done, this is not a group project. So each student will have to come up with a unique solution and representation to the assignment set. Okay. Really, what we are trying to introduce you to here again is the different parts that architects go through in an architect's office. Both Jack and Melanie will tell you that the architect's office is always open plan, and the architect's office, as well as the design studio, is the one place where it is completely encouraged, where being a busybody is completely encouraged, because that is the fastest way for us to pick up on difficult material, and also the fastest way for projects or for designs to actually progress. So quite often you'll be sitting at your desk doing something, and someone will drop by and say, "That's interesting, why don't you do this?" And that someone is not necessarily the boss. It could be, it is very flat in its hierarchy. It could well be the boss. It could be one of your peers. It could be someone in between you and the boss. It could be someone who works under you. It could be anyone in there. You know, it might even be someone who's not a designer who works in the office coming up and saying, "Why don't you, that doesn't look like it'll be very nice to use. What are you going to do about this?" And that then suggests to the designer that they may already have considered it, and maybe it's just not clear to the person looking at it, or maybe it's something they missed. And this is really good information to actually have many eyes looking at the one thing. So in the design studio, it's really about all of you looking at each other's work and to foster this collaborative design practice. Are there any questions? Okay, thanks everyone. Let's break into our tutorial groups. Just a reminder that Robert's group will be taken by Melanie for this week and next week, or for this assignment 1, and then we'll move back to Robert when he gets back after that. So Rob's group will meet at 2:30 with Melanie in the glass box. Thanks everyone.